we have a fundamental philosophy that great businesses have really high-performing human beings. And those high-performing human beings need great tools and technology. It's better to have a mediocre process that's followed relentlessly than a great process that's never followed. Operationalizing excellence is really a detail-oriented thing, and it really is cultural. You have to build this kind of culture where people are willing to constrain themselves to a process, and then they're willing to do what the Japanese called Kaizen. The first thing we did, because we are a culture-first company, like we will sacrifice a lot for it. Growth. We stopped interviewing for skills in the beginning, and we started interviewing for culture. So now that sounds good, but most people don't know how to interview for culture. That's how you operationalize, is you built a great culture, and then your people start taking things over, and things just start manifesting. Solutions just start manifesting across time.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. In the first part of our conversation, Mike Chaput and I explored how leaders can build human-centered, values-driven cultures that scale. In this second part, we turn to the other side of enduring success, the practical strategies and disciplines that make a company resilient over the long run. What does it really take to achieve sustainable growth, strong margins, and financial health without burning out yourself or your team? Mike bought his first company at 24 with borrowed money, which led to early failure and bankruptcy, but also ignited a lifelong drive to understand what makes businesses succeed. From those lessons, he built Endsight into one of the top-performing IT support companies in the country. Today, Endsight is a team of 140 people, generating $35 million in annual revenues and serving over 400 clients with a 20% EBITDA margin, placing it in the top 1 percentile of its industry. As a founder and the CEO of Endsight, as well as a board member and trusted advisor to multiple companies, Mike brings a grounded, outrageous perspective to leadership and sustainable growth. Before we dive in, please remember we learn from each other and grow with each other. This podcast wouldn't be possible without your engagement. Please remember to like, subscribe, follow, share, and comment. But most important, ask and answer questions. Thank you for tuning in. And here's Mike.
The first problem with core values, almost all core values, is that nobody knows them.
Yeah.
Like if you think about this, like if you talk to any, like if you go ask a CEO, do you guys have core values? They all say yes. And then you say, what are they? And they kind of, it's funny because you could watch, they kind of know them, but they struggle a little bit to kind of get them perfectly. And it's like, look, man, if you don't know these things like cold, there's like a 0 chance that people, 2 levels from know them at all.
Yeah.
Like nobody's like, you don't know them well enough to get them. So your core value, this is a big challenge here, but your core values have to be memorable.
Yes.
And branded.
Yeah.
They have to, if people don't know what they are, then they're inaccessible. And if they're inaccessible, they're not useful.
Yeah.
So, I think of core values as a hierarchy.
Yeah. I'm sorry. A clarification. You said they have to be branded. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yes. I'm about to.
Okay. So sorry. Go ahead. Pyramid.
Like we remember brands, we remember images and colors and logos and all of these kind of things.
Right.
So, you need to brand your core values. Like you need to put some energy into it. It's your ethos.
Yeah.
And so our core values are really easy to remember, and you'll see why. First of all, it starts with an acronym. RSVP.
Yeah.
So like by the end of this conversation, you'll know them because like you'll remember RSVP.
Yeah.
Like I know RSVP. I've used that acronym before. That's simple.
Yeah.
So for the first thing we do is we offer a plug.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the next, that's like at the top.
Yeah.
That's a pinnacle.
Yeah.
Then right below that, each of those letters just have 2 words to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So R stands for respect and connect.
Yeah.
Easy to remember.
Right.
S stands for servant's heart.
Yeah.
Easy to remember.
Yeah.
P stands for progress over comfort.
Yeah.
Super. I missed a V. V stands for value.
Mm-hmm.
And then P stands for progress over comfort.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing you'll notice about those is like, I kind of get what they mean. Maybe I don't understand value very well, but I kind of understand what you mean when you say respect and connect. I know what those 2 words mean, and I can imagine what a culture would be like. I kind of understand what servant's heart means as well, and so value is confusing.
Yeah.
but it has something to do with value.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll explain it in a second. And then progress over comfort, I kind of get that too. You know, we're not about trying just to be as comfortable as possible. We're trying to make some progress. Okay, so I've got very memorable, pretty memorable, but what I've lacked is clarity.
Right.
By the way, I also want to point out that each one of those values has an icon, has imagery associated with it as well.
Neat. Yeah.
So now I've got something memorable, but it isn't necessarily clear.
Yeah.
But then each of those values has 4 or 5 bullet points that say a belief statement.
Yeah.
That describes, so like 4 we believe statements that describe what the values mean.
Yeah.
Okay. And then each one of those belief statements has a whole bunch of philosophy underneath that that's even deeper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're both memorable, clear, and deep.
Yeah.
Now there's one other component that values need, and they need to be aligned with your mission. So like if living the values won't manifest your vision, then either the vision needs to change or the values need to change.
Right.
Because like it's the code.
Yeah.
Like if everybody lives these values out every day, that's the operating system that's going to manifest the vision.
Sure.
So the final thing that they need to be is they need to be round or complete.
Yeah.
Like what if I have 75% of the instruction set necessary to manage my, manage my, or to get to my vision, but 25% we're just off track all the time.
Yeah.
So they have to be like round. They have to be in balance. You can't have, if you might have one statement, but it might need a little bit of balance from another statement that means that you're going to drive straight. Otherwise you're just doing circles to the left because of one statement.
Sure.
So the value system is actually incredibly important. It needs to be memorable, clear, aligned, deep, and then it needs to be complete or round.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot to ask, but it is possible. And maybe by way of example, I can just give like one example of a belief statement. So under servant's heart, there are about 4 bullet points. The first one is one of my favorites, and it says, a leader's purpose is to serve their team so that team members can serve their customers and each other. That's just one of the 4 or 5 bullets.
Yeah.
But in that bullet point, there's a book called The Motive by Patrick Lencioni, who I've mentioned on there, that talks about servant leadership. Yeah. And if you want to be a leader at Endsight, then it's required reading to read The Motive. Right. Because, we talk about leadership styles a lot. And to me, if you're not talking about motive by the leader, then you've got a serious problem, because like I already talked about earlier in the podcast, if the leader is, if their true motive is just to accrue, let's say, power or prestige or wealth to themselves, and that's really all they're in it for, then they're creating an impossible barrier for followership, because like nobody's going to follow.
Yeah, that's true.
So when the leader gets their motive right, when they want the best for the entirety of the ecosystem, which could include them. I'm not saying it has to be completely self-sacrificial, but it needs to include everybody in the ecosystem, and they can be included in that.
Sure.
So I don't want leaders to work against their self-interest. That would be some kind of moral hazard that won't work. But they have to be included in a greater ecosystem where things go well. And if people know that, then they create a necessary precondition for followership. Sure. And so if the motive is wrong, like your style is not going to matter too much. You're just going to be stuck in people subverting you perpetually because they see you as some kind of tyrant out for yourself. Yeah. And so that bullet point is a necessary, let's say, precondition for our whole ethos, our whole helping others thrive. And so now there's probably like 20 bullets, and there's probably at least 20 books. There might be 40 books. And so the further you get up in the leadership scale, the more of that material you have to understand, and there's source material to go to. Yeah. And then, you have it all. You have the memorable thing in RSVP, and then you have the deep thing in a book. Yeah. Called The Motive by Patrick Lencioni. So culture is just absolutely essential element.
Yes.
When you think about values, they're constraining behavior. So take respect to connect. The first bullet point on respect to connect is that we believe that all people are worthy of respect and dignity. Yeah. And we talk about thorny things in that. Yeah. So we might talk about, does a criminal deserve respect? Yeah. Yeah. And my answer to that is, it's about us.
Yeah.
Like they come through the legal system.
Right.
And if we want to hold on to our dignity, we have to treat them with dignity in our legal
Yeah.
system. That doesn't mean they don't get accountability.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that they're not going to be held accountable to their crime.
Yeah.
But we don't have to treat them with disrespect along the way.
Sure.
We could treat them with respect for us,
Right,
so that we remain dignified.
exactly.
And so we believe in respect as a precondition. Now, you might think, well, why do I want as an employee to submit to a whole bunch of core values? Like, I'd rather just be free to do whatever I want. And the challenge with that, of course, is that you have to work in an environment where everybody gets to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So if you want to act disrespectfully, that might be fine. That might be what you want, but you're going to be in an environment where everybody else is free to act disrespectfully too. The constraint is not just to you; it's to the entirety of the culture.
Yes, that's so important.
And that, and that's why you make a trade-off. If you like it, if especially, by the way, it's perfect alignment if this is who I really want to be anyway. I want to act like this anyway. This is exactly how I want to be. This is how I envision myself. Right. I don't even really like it when I act out of alignment with my ideals. And so this place helps me be more of who I want to be anyway. And that makes a great set of core values.
Yes. Yeah. And constraints are not always necessarily oppression. So, sometimes we take on constraints. If I have a child, I'm going to take on certain constraints in my life. I'm going to work less. I'm going to make some time because of that positive bond that I want to have with my child, right? It's just an example. Is that constraints can, it could be out of love or inspiration or duty or respect. There's so many other things, that we can bring to that, that the idea of constraint, right? There's a reason why I choose to constrain myself, right, in a specific environment, given, even with the corporate culture and the company culture, right? So,
well, that's all a game is. It's like a game is just a predetermined set of constraints, and that's what makes it fun.
That you agree to and accept it. Yeah.
Try playing basketball with no rules. It's like, it's not a game. Right. It's not fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's all. Another example of this that I use, and this will tag vision on the constraint thing too, is I used to play. My kids are old now; they're 18 and 22.
Right.
And but I used to play Minecraft with them when they were like younger. Like 8, 9, 10, 11, like that kind of era.
Yeah.
And that you kind of descend into this world with an avatar, and it's kind of like you can build things with Legos, but the game is rather free. And when it's free, it's actually not that fun. Like it becomes fun as soon as you establish a mission. Like, let's build a castle.
Yes.
All of a sudden it transforms the whole landscape into tools, and you have a mission, and like there's obstacles, there's these like creepers that come out at night, and you have to figure out how the whole game becomes a game.
Yeah.
Once you establish a constraint, it also becomes work.
Right.
Which is so funny. Like you give up freedom for like work.
Yeah.
And you find that it actually feels like work sometimes. You're like mining, you're mining rocks, and people are doing stuff, and you're like holding each other accountable and developing teams. It feels exactly like work, but it's also fun because you set that target.
Absolutely.
And that's where the dopamine, so you could start seeing your to the distance of but you do it with constraints.
Yes.
And so you're right, by the way, we think we want no constraints, but actually, it's one of my favorite thought leaders is a former Navy SEAL commander named Jocko Willink. And he calls it freedom through discipline.
Yeah. Right.
So, it's the same idea, you take away a lot of decisions, like I eat this for breakfast. And I go to the gym on these days for this long, and you've created constraints in your life, but then because those decisions are made, you actually have more freedom in some strange way because your life is on track, and then the time that's not accounted for, you actually have more freedom.
Absolutely.
So
it applies to all aspects of our life. If an artist has to create, a painter needs the boundary of a canvas to express. James Cameron. He works with all kinds of restrictions, but
music is that way too. It's like you're constrained by your key, your scale patterns, The type of music, the genre constrains
Absolutely.
you, your tempo, all these things put constraints. And that's why it sounds beautiful, because as the creativity with all these constraints creates beauty.
And it
Just
frees you
no
up.
constraints creates noise.
Right. Exactly. And there is that freedom there. Within those constraints is that freedom. And that's where the joy is, the joy of creation. And we can go on like this for another hour on this exact topic. So thank you for bringing it up. You said that there is a required reading. That's one book, right? You gave that example. And that you start with that, I'm assuming, right? But that's not all, right? Now, now culture creation. When we want to a culture, a group of people, it's you can say that it's not necessarily an easy thing, right? Because you're changing people. You talk about belief. You're changing people's belief systems. They're changing. Everybody comes to an event like an employment with their own preconditioned ideas of what the world is, what they are, what the other people are, things like that. So there is this preconditioning. And we don't necessarily have to all break through it, but there is, military, there may be some level of either rewiring or reprogramming or, resetting the belief system. Sometimes they just, so the reason why I bring that up is, that, and Jim Collins talks about, putting the right people in the bus, right? How important do you think is the hiring process, the recruitment process, to pick the right people before you can acculture them? Or is that not that important to you in your view?
If you want a great culture, it starts with who you let in.
Yeah.
It starts with that. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't end there.
Right.
But at Endsight, the people who we have to hire have technical skills that are highly sought after, and there's less of them in the world than are needed in the world.
Yeah.
So it's an upside down supply and demand. There's not enough people who know the stuff,
right,
as compared to the people who need. So you're seduced, I guess is the right word, into just, if they know how to do what you need them to do, it's like, and they're available, you want to hire them, right?
Yeah.
And there's a seduction towards that.
Sure.
At Endsight, one of the things that we did, we did two things on the hiring side that are maybe worth sharing with your audience. The first thing we did, because we are a culture first company, like we will sacrifice a lot for it. Growth, meaning like we won't, if we can't hire good people, or if a customer is kind of taking us out of culture, like we're culture first, and then we believe that will drive the rest of the goals. So we stopped interviewing for skills in the beginning, and we started interviewing for culture. Right. So now that sounds good, but most people don't know how to interview for culture. Yeah. And so what we did is we actually used a technique that I already mentioned once on the podcast, which is we started with a lifeline. Yeah. So what that meant was we'd bring in a candidate and we would say, okay, on the vertical axis, high is feeling good, low is feeling low. Yeah. And on the horizontal axis is your life across time. Yeah. And what we want you to do is plot some of the highs and lows on your life and tell us about those things. So like, it could be, maybe you went through a divorce. Yeah. Maybe you won a championship as a kid in a sport. Maybe you failed in some significant way or won in some significant way. Like plot those points out and tell us about them. And we explained this before, and it's like, you don't fail the you part of your interview. Like we're trying to get to know you. Yeah. And if you don't want to tell us about you, that's a fail.
Automatic
like, you
rejection.
Or you. Yeah. Like, and so if we, at the end of this, if we feel like we got to know you, you might get the job, you might not. But if we don't feel like we got to know you, you're definitely not getting the job.
Right. Yes.
So then people come in understanding what's going to happen. Yeah. And so they share. I mean, when we used to do that, we have to do a lot of this virtually now, but we used to do it in person. Like there was a Kleenex box because people would like share their heart in a way that they hadn't done. It was like a therapeutic session. Like they felt so connected at the end of the thing that we'd get these like, like we get these comments when people would come on and they would say like, I feel like like, I feel like my manager now knows me better than my manager that I work for the last 5 years.
Right.
Like because of this interview.
Yeah.
So they feel like they had that connection coming out because they really shared something while they were doing it. But what we're doing, by the way, is we're listening to their story. It's not a judgment.
Yeah.
It's our job to drill in. It's like, what did you like about your coach?
Yeah.
What did you admire about your dad?
Yeah.
Why don't you think you got along with your mom? What was about her character that didn't work for you? And what we're doing is we're pulling out ethics. We're figuring out what that person's like, what they value,
right,
what they don't value.
Sure.
And then we're looking for alignment to our culture.
Yeah. Yes.
So do they value the things that we value?
Yeah. Yeah.
Based on their story.
Sure.
Is there evidence in their story that that they already are preconditioned to, share our way of life?
Yes. Yeah.
And, do we feel connected to them?
Yeah.
Because if we don't, like, how are they going to live, respect, and connect?
Yes.
Like if they can't form a bond here, like, do we already want them to win? Are we like, they're not Endsight, they're not going to share this way.
Yeah.
So we do that before we know skills.
Yes.
So we wash out candidates and then we run them through like a lab and a skills-based interview, and it's hard skills. And then if they pass both bars, then they get an offer.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about this is that we have just like an unbelievably good offer to acceptance ratio. Like by the time people accept the job, they're feeling like this is my place.
Yeah.
Like I'm connected. I like the ideology here. I want to be part of this, and they accept the offer. And so the answer to the question is, I think it's really important. Like you got to do interviews right.
Right.
And one of the things that we got wrong is like, so it's so dumb in retrospect. And I hate to call it that. Maybe people are still doing this, but we used to have this mentality where we'd be like, well, we really need somebody, and if they don't work out, we'll just fire them. Like that is such a terrible philosophy. Like if there's one thing it's so like the cost of a bad hire is so much more than you think it is. Like we tend to think it's going to be like the salary between the time when we hire them, but in the meantime, they're a bad employee. They take up an enormous amount of managerial attention. They drag down your culture. They give your customers bad experiences. And because you're a pro-human environment, you give them way longer to fit in than you probably should have.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you're holding a seat that could have been with a great person that's skilling up. You're slowing everything down. There's almost no amount of time and energy you can put into hiring the right people that won't pay off if you avoid a bad hire.
Absolutely. Right.
So we put a lot of time on the recruiting on the front end to try to get people who are great people. And that. It doesn't stop there though. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff beyond that, but that's certainly a critical first step.
You said two things. Did you cover both?
When you hire the person, you get somebody who's preconditioned to want to be a part of your culture.
Yeah.
If you do it right. But one of the things that I do as CEO and kind of like I want to say like the spiritual leader of culture.
Sure.
It's like somebody, remember, I'm the first follower. The culture is externalized.
Yes.
It's the values.
Yeah.
You're not following me. You're following this set of prescribed values, which we've all agreed to. I'm following it too. Sure. I'm held accountable to respect and connect, just like you're held accountable to respect and connect. Like we're all agreeing to submit to this externalized vision and value statement. But then what I do as the kind of the spiritual leader is I bring cohorts in. So, think if we hired 3 employees in the last month, then they'll come in and they'll meet with me, and we'll go through and read every single bullet together. They'll react to it, and then I'll explain how it got there, who the thought leadership is, what it means, what it looks like at Endsight.
Yes.
They'll describe why they thought it was attractive, why they're interested in it.
Yeah.
They'll ask questions about it. I didn't really understand this one. I'll explain it there. I'll give them the background. That meeting's 2 hours.
Yeah.
And we do that with every new employee sits down with me for 2 hours in this kind of forum. That's an orientation.
Yeah.
Then we have 8 company meetings a year. We have a quarterly company meeting where we go through like metrics and updates, and then we have a town hall that's mostly Q&A.
Sure.
But every meeting starts with we have this thing called the Wheel of Awesome, where anybody who's given recognition on core values gets a ticket, and we give them swag and prizes and stuff. So we start with core values, then we end with core value stories.
Yeah.
So like public recognition, we pick somebody who's exhibited one of the core values so that we can both recognize them for it, but we can also showcase to everybody what it looks like to live out core values and Endsight in each all hands meetings. And we start, I kind of already told you, we start all our manager meetings with good news, where we talk about people who are exhibiting core values, and then we include customer feedback in real time. And so you have to operationalize, so that there's moments in time in your corporation where values are going to be given some time and attention if you want them to be alive in your corporation. You can't put them on a website and think that's that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Recruiting, orientation, operations, it's got to hit everywhere.
Yeah. And we haven't talked too much about the operationalizing part of all of this. And we are running a little bit, we have time, but are there any nuggets of gold that you can share in terms of how do you operationalize? And I took that to mean, how do you execute? Are there 1 or 2 or 3 things that you can point out that are super important once you have the vision, you have the values, all of that is being reinforced, you're hiring for them, and you're doing what you can to reinforce the culture. How do you operationalize it?
So, well, it's an interesting question. So maybe I'll get into value. So that was like this. Like, what does value mean? So first of all, the first value is like a verb. It's like a command. Like, we're asking you to place value in.
Sure.
And the second value is the concept of customer value. So we want employees to value customer value. And underneath that, when we talk about the we believe statements, are a bunch of operational ideas that are super important to Endsight.
Sure.
So we actually have talked about some of these across. So what do we do to run a great operation? So the first thing we start out with is one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have a place to do it.
Yeah.
The second thing, which we already talked about, is you have to have managers at the Gemba. Managers need to be observing work.
Right.
Because you're not going to have great ideas.
Yeah.
Then the third thing I mentioned very briefly, but we have these things called problem registers. So when people aren't hitting goals or aren't able to hit goals, there's a location where they can put that down there that's observed and managed. And then we already kind of talked about these rhythms that we have, the weekly rhythms and the quarterly rhythms, where we set strategic rocks and objectives.
Yeah.
Those are usually harvested from the problem register so that people can work on an actual issue inside the company.
Right.
And then we use a bunch of other lean techniques. There's this lean technique called an A3. So somebody can run an A3. Basically, that's just the A3 was like a sheet of paper where you're supposed to basically put all your notes about the problem and it has to be condensed into something you could show somebody. But we use all kinds of tools and techniques, whether it's automation or reporting or business information, to try to figure out better ways of solving the problem.
Yeah.
And an example of this, just like an operational example to maybe make it a little bit more colorful, is like, oftentimes I join like a sales meeting with a new prospective client, and they might say something to me like, our current provider never gets the workstation rollout deployed. And like, I can't figure out how they miss it. It's so simple. We just want the new workstation with the same applications as the old workstation has on it, and they can't do it. And, like me, like with all this like lean and operational stuff, I'm like, that's actually a really hard thing to do right. Like, first you have to even know that a workstation needs to be deployed, which is like there's like a whole tool and rhythm to basically managing the dates of each of these machines and figuring out when they're out of management. Then you actually have to spec the thing right? Because there's about a bazillion different machines, desktop, laptops, various screens and all that kind of stuff. You have to figure that stuff out. And then you have to know what apps are on it,
Yeah.
which seems like it should be simple enough, but it's not, because users are installing a bunch of software that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Then you have to know where the data is at, because they're supposed to put it over here, but they don't. They store a bunch of stuff locally.
Yeah.
And then you have to coordinate with that user who's never available, and we never get enough lead time because we just find out that so-and-so's starting. And then, and it problem keeps expanding,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you can imagine it. And it's like, to get this thing right time and time again has been a product of constant effort. Surveys, problem registers, accountability, training, all these types of stuff. And then when you think you get it right, the whole landscape of workstation changes, the landscape of software changes. It's like, and you're having to iterate it potentially just to stay current. And the customer doesn't really think about any of that. They're just like, it's so easy. I just want a new workstation. I just want it to be there. And so, operationalizing excellence is really a detail oriented thing. And it really is cultural.
Yeah.
Like if you have to have people who want great operations to begin with,
Yes.
and who are going to pay attention to those details. Like nobody really wants to follow process all that much. It's like a bureaucratic constraint again.
Yeah.
And what I always say is like, it's better to have a mediocre process that's followed relentlessly than a great process that's never followed.
Yeah.
Because a great process that's never followed doesn't yield any good results.
That's like no process.
And you can't modify it to get it better because nobody's going to follow it. Let's say you make it even better, but nobody's following it anyway, or it's inconsistently followed.
Right.
So, you have to build this kind of culture where people are willing to constrain themselves to a process, and then they're willing to do what the Japanese called Kaizen, which is constantly improve.
Right.
And so you have to basically, start with, it starts and ends with culture, honestly, and engagement. So that's how you operationalize, is you built a great culture, and then your people start taking things over, and things just start manifesting, solutions just start manifesting across time.
Absolutely. Today you are at $35 million in revenues, 400 clients, 140 employees, and I think best in business margins. I think you were saying, what was it, 20% margins? Yeah.
It depends on how you calculate them. Like if you use the EBITDA,
right,
which adds back depreciation and amortization, then that's where we look at 20%.
Yeah.
And for our business space, that's considered best in class.
Yes.
And we're let's say we're not super shy about this. Like we publish this to our employees. We don't really publish it to clients, although if they look at this and think, oh my gosh, we want to negotiate or something.
That's right.
It's like we work hard. We work hard for these margins. We don't try to make good margins at the expense of what the customer gets.
Yes, you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a fundamental philosophy that great businesses have really high performing human beings.
Yeah.
And those high performing human beings need great tools and technology.
Yes.
It's like it's impossible to have a high performing team and give them bad tools and technology.
Yeah.
And the amount that you spend, the difference between, let's say, our company and let's just call it a lower quality or lower price MSP might be a big difference in terms of percentage. But it's not all that much when you compare it to the head count of the person we're supporting.
Yeah.
And so when we can really bring in great support, which is challenging, right? It requires a lot of managerial attention. It requires building a great culture.
Right.
And if you're going to grow on top of that, you kind of need the margin. You can't, if you don't have margin and you're paying taxes and your balance sheets are expanding and all that kind of stuff, you end up not being able to invest in like we built a great cybersecurity practice. We're building a great AI consulting practice. We built a great business intelligence practice, and those benefit our clients enormously. Yeah. And if we don't have the kind of cash flow constraints, we can't grow, we can't build new products and services, we can't try anything new. And we'd be like any of these other companies that just, let's say, sold the business to a private equity who's gonna who's going to get those margins, and they're going to do it in potentially, I'm not saying all of them, but they're potentially could do it in a way that erodes culture and erodes the value that the customers get in the end. So I really, really believe that that your customers win and your employees win when you have a financially solvent business. Like nobody wants to work for a company where they don't know if they're going to get their paycheck.
100%.
And no customer should want to work for a business that they're not sure if they're going to be around, or is not, let's say, happy to be engaged with them. Like, we're happy for all of our customers because all of our customers yield us profit and we're happy with all of our employees because they yield us. So the capital table is happy, we're happy to keep investing in the enterprise as a result of it throwing off margin. Now, we don't hit that goal every single quarter, but it's the target, and we do hit it quite frequently.
Yeah.
And most of our industry is doing something like half of that. So, like 10% would be way more common amongst the MSP marketplace. In general. We're proud of it, but it requires just a constant attention to detail across every single dimension. It's very difficult to do when you have low performing people. It's very difficult to do when you have clients that aren't aligned with your service delivery model.
Right.
Like if you have a client that really wants to be with a low cost leader, and they're gonna, let's say, contest every single bill you put out there. It's very difficult to try to achieve those financial results. So we're proud of it. And we think that's, like a great business should be able to run at that kind of margin.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. You got to have those margins to operate at the level that you're operating and providing the value that you do. So, and a sort of it may be a difficult question, maybe not for you. Those results that you've achieved, the revenues and the growth, we haven't talked too much about the growth and things like that, but I'll come to that in a bit. But these results that you've achieved, if you were to put your finger on one thing that is like a non-negotiable, that helped you achieve these results. Another way of saying the same thing is, let's say, you talked about, potentially exiting or selling to private equity. I'm not saying that you do, but let's pretend that you want to step back as a leader and want to let the company go on its own, and someone else comes and takes over the company. So what's one thing that you think helps you achieve that the levels of results that you achieved, and absolutely non-negotiable, and you would say to this next management as an advice? They might keep you as a consultant or something like that. Change whatever else you want, but don't change this one thing. What would that be?
Yeah, it's a really funny question. It's almost like kind of trapping me in a statement that I made before, because my answer is culture.
Yeah.
And I started with saying that you have to be willing to iterate your culture.
Yes.
And now here I'm saying the one thing I wouldn't change is culture. And I think this kind of goes to the real insight from the Built to Last Jim Collins companies. It's like, you need to iterate your culture until it starts manifesting the results that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Once it starts manifesting the results that you're looking for, that's when you want to really hold on to it like to the core, where it becomes kind of the platform to build on. When you're early in your finding your way in your business, you want to leave it open for something to iterate. But even with culture, like if we hit a wall, and we couldn't figure out why we were hitting the wall, I would try to be saying, well, is it cultural? Like, what are we doing culturally? That's getting in the way.
Right.
And I would consider a very careful modification to, let's say, one of the bullet points, or adding a bullet point because there's some kind of behavior that's missing or necessary, in there. So even in that case, I'm still a little bit open to modifying our value set if the culture needs to modify in order to get, let's say, through the next generation. So like an example would be like, let's say, this isn't too hypothetical. I think AI is a major inflection point of change facing our business. Right. And so let's just say that in our core value stack, there wasn't enough emphasis on innovation in it to reach sufficiency in the new world of AI. That might be like, okay, maybe progress over comfort needs clarification,
Right.
because we're not engaging aggressively enough in innovation so that we're not going to be relevant. So I would really think about what it was. I would do the research. I would look at the thought leadership of companies that were more innovative, and I would try to incorporate it so that it's not a huge shift, but it's like I keep the as much of the core in place as possible, and I might pivot slightly. Now, it turns out, by the way, that that's not the case. Like, our team is like, they're blowing my mind with like, we bought the Chat GPT corporate edition. We rolled it out to the team. People are inventing rapidly on it. It's really exciting to me. So I use that example as something that might be the case. It's not the case. So I don't need to change the culture.
Exactly.
But it would be like something like, okay, there's this inflection point that comes in, and maybe the culture was really good for the current world, but maybe it's not good for the new world. And I have to think about how to lead it through with culture. But ultimately, like that's the one thing to me that is that you need to be willing to iterate when you're not hitting your goals. But when you have a great company and you are hitting your goals, you want to move incredibly cautiously. With changing your culture. I think that's probably the better way that Jim Collins, should have described this thing in his Built to Last research. But
And Mike, what's next for Endsight? Endsight.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited about the future. It's like, I'm like a buzz about it. So what's next is, obviously, it's very obvious to me that the world is going to be very different in 10 years than it is today, given AI. I view AI as being more disruptive than broadband internet.
Really?
I think it's the most disruptive technology in my 50 years on the planet. I think it's going to take probably longer than a lot of pundits think it's going to take to manifest. I don't think it's, quite like, all the lawyers are going to be out of jobs tomorrow or anything like that. But ultimately, I see AI being able to do a lot of what human beings do now. And that includes, by the way, workers in IT. And so, that could be scary if you were an IT worker. But for my company, I'm actually quite excited about it, because we have these technology forward, very smart human beings working for the company. And they're not scared of technology. They're early adopters of it. That's why they're in computer technology. They're embracing this. They're inventing stuff all the time. And I think if we can be the first to disrupt it, then we can start shifting what we do for customers to offer them even more value further and further up the stack. And the obvious place to start is helping them implement AI. So I think all my customers need guidance, expertise, and support to figure out how to use AI in their businesses to better serve their customers downstream. And I think that marketplace is huge. And so to me, I'm looking at, we're launching, we promoted one of our senior executives to an AI practice manager. He's managing internal AI deployments, and then he's going to be working with existing customers to help them with it. I just think that's going to be a huge value creation to help our customers win and thrive and grow. So the customers working with us, I think, are going to be at a massive advantage. And again, that's what you get for paying a little bit more, right? You're working with a forward-thinking technology provider that's going to help you through these transient things that are risks to your business and help you win and thrive in it. So I'm actually really excited about it. But more than that, there are a lot of fatalists out there in the world. They're like, oh, nobody's going to have anything to do. I really don't believe that. I don't think that there's a limited number of problems that humanity's facing. And so I think all we're going to do is keep upgrading the problems that we're able to work on. And, we're going to be able to use AI to just increase the material well-being of mankind. It should drive product prices down. It should make services that were only available to a small number of people available to a large number of people. I think it's going to disrupt healthcare delivery so that people will have high quality healthcare on demand for low cost. I mean, like, we're spending so much of our GDP on healthcare. That would be a welcome disruption. I think it'll make education more effective. So I think it's just going to have a really good impact. Now, there will be I don't think it's going to be all good all the time.
Right.
I think it's just like any other
Sure.
technology. And maybe I'll use social media, like this podcast, for
Yeah.
example. Like, I think social media has a lot of disruptive problems, and it's been particularly hard on teenage girls,
Yeah.
and that's been like a Jonathan Haidt thing,
Right.
with his book, The Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
But I also believe that social media in the long run is going to be a really powerful format for spreading great ideas.
Right.
And, like with your podcast and with others like this, I think we can put out great ideas. We can make them accessible to lots of people.
Love
I
it.
can't talk to
Yeah.
a bunch of young businessmen, everyone individually,
Yeah.
but I can record this podcast and maybe I can give them access to some ideas. When I was their age trying to make it in business, there wasn't a me sitting around telling,
Right.
at
We didn't
50,
have it.
trying to share all these things that
Yeah.
I've learned, but now there is. And so, I think social media can be just a terrific way of spreading great ideas and socially verifying them.
Yes.
So this is just a call to anybody who might be listening to this. Like, if you thought this was useful at all, don't sit on like, I used to hate it
Yeah.
when I would watch a video and they'd be like, hey, like and subscribe. Like,
Yeah.
I used to find that distasteful, but now I understand how these algorithms work. Like, you need social verification. And so if you thought these ideas were good and you don't comment or like or subscribe, you're not telling the algorithm that it needs to show it to somebody
Exactly.
else.
Thank you for the reminder.
And so
Yeah.
you kind of have to engage in the system the way it's set up. And so if you thought this was a good idea, maybe tell Bhavesh what you thought was a good idea about it.
Yeah.
And if you thought it was a bad idea, like, let's get it right. Like, put it in the comments. I'm not scared of that
Let's
either.
have a
Like, I want to
conversation.
get it right. I want to get these ideas right.
Yeah.
And if you thought that there's a point that needs to be made, like, comment. But engagement is going to be the key
Yes.
to making sure good ideas spread.
Absolutely.
And so that would maybe be a good plug for your group.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes. And I think that what we're doing right now, having an off-the-cuff conversation where ideas pop, that is something that I don't think AI would ever be able to do. Even the AGI, that's my personal prediction. But we'll see, right? So it's on the tape now. And so this is so valuable, right? That we can, and as you and I are talking like this, the idea is that the audience, people who are listening or watching, they'll also have their own ideas, right? And if they do something with it, as in comment and elaborate and agree or disagree and have a debate, that allows them to own those ideas, and more importantly, have their own ideas. The evolution of values and things like that. That's how it happens, through conversations, right? And on this podcast, we're all about perspectives. The more the perspectives, the better. We come here. So the idea is that we become our best business philosopher. That doesn't mean that we shut ourselves off to ideas, right? Because we grow through those ideas, right? And we evolve. So thank you for that plug. Entrepreneurial journey, the business building journey is not always moonlight and roses. And sometimes there is what I call the dark night of the soul kinds of moment that we live through. Has there ever been a moment in your entrepreneurial journey? I know that there was you started with a bankruptcy, and that could be part of it. But was there ever a time when you thought the going was so difficult that you weren't going to make it? Obviously, you're here, you made it. But could you share one example?
I mean, I told you I was part of this group called YPO, and we do these really cool things. And we had this event, and I was told to watch this documentary by this woman named Amanda Knox.
Yeah.
And it's on Netflix, and she was this young student studying abroad in Italy. And she was convicted for murder, and she was put in jail, and then she was released, and then convicted again, and then released. And she was, I watched the documentary, and then she showed up there, and she did like a speech.
Yeah.
And then I went back into a room with like 8 YPOers, and it's all like this. It's supposed to be this like intimate sharing, confidentiality thing.
Right.
And the question we were going to pontificate in this group study was, when had you been a victim, and I don't know how to say this any other way, but I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, I'm a YPO member. By now my business has been successful, and I'm a white man, I'm thinking to myself, like, I just don't know. I just don't identify at all as a victim in any way.
Right.
I came in like having no idea what I was going to talk about, especially following this person who was like clearly a victim of injustice. And people started going around, and I just started realizing, like, oh my God, like there's been so many moments now where what I dealt with was just like malevolent. Like there's just no other way of describing it. And it starts with the bankruptcy, like I part of the 4-year success run was I spent so much of my time trying to develop this software development practice at that time. And it, we grew it from like, $200,000 a year to something like $2 million a year. And it was part of the whole way we ended up paying for anything. And the developer stole the business and left. And we had no way of surviving. And we had no money for a lawsuit. And even if we could win the lawsuit without the developer, we had no way of delivering the service. But it was like this partnership. Like I was out there selling the thing and building this business, and we thought we had agreements and arrangements financially and otherwise, and he just stole it. And so that we went bankrupt. And then, after the bankruptcy, I had this employee who literally committed sabotage on a handful of customers, meaning taking down their networks while working for us. And then on the weekend, going and saving the day and blaming the situation on us so that he could position himself to steal those customers to start his own business with. And if that's not bad enough, I had a controller who worked for me for like 10 years who I caught embezzling. I mean, that was a gut punch. So, like, and I mean, I was just like total trust, like 10 years, like of running your financials. And it's just like, and so, and that's just like, I mean, it's kind of brushing the surface, but it's like, I've also had, great employees who I love to leave, and great customers who I just, felt terrible when they left, and so, being an entrepreneur, you put your heart and your soul into it, man. You just
100%.
You lay it all out there. It's you put an identity to it. You put your passion. You put so much time into it. You have a different type of life and career than is easy for anybody to understand. And so, when you're, especially when you're younger, you take everything really hard. And so there's just plenty of moments where you just think like, how do I press forward, in this? When we had the embezzlement, it was pretty public in the company. We didn't hide from it. We're very transparent, with our team. We talk about the profitability. We just, I figure if people aren't adult enough to know what's going on, then there's probably a bunch of other companies that will be willing to hide the truth from them. But that's not my approach. My approach has always been like, I'm going to tell you what is, and if you don't like it, you could tell me you don't like it, and maybe I'll learn something. But but it's too much energy to try to hide things. So we told this, and my business partner at the time sent out a letter. I'll never forget it. And the title of the letter was, "We're doubling down on trust." And the gist was, it would be easy to kind of change our ethos to try to protect and think everybody's threatening, but that's not what got us here. And that's not what's going to get us to the next level.
Right.
And it might mean we're going to get taken advantage of again. And we're willing to take that
the risk you
risk
have to take.
Because our team is worth default trust, and that's what we're going to do. And so, I think that's the right way to live, in spite of all that stuff I told you. But it's, if there are somebody who's watching the show who's thinking about going into entrepreneurship, I mean, it does take some fortitude and some resilience. That's 100%. For sure. I mean, it's.
And on that note, Mike, where do you go? And I ask this question to everyone. this entrepreneurship is not a walk in the park. The question I have for you is, maybe someone can get inspired by this, is where do you go, literally or figuratively, to kind of keep yourself grounded and also inspired at the same time? How do you self-care?
Well, that's been a journey, for me.
Yeah.
I do a lot of things, to be honest. I play music.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Where do you play?
And here what I'm in is like a little studio,
Okay.
but I played with bands, I play live, but it's mostly just for me.
Yeah.
I play guitar, I sing,
Sure.
I play piano and keys. I play bass guitar
Yeah.
and percussions. I like music.
Yeah.
Music puts me in a state of flow, and the rest, it's too complicated. The stuff I like to play is complicated for me.
Yeah.
And so it forces me to like not think about other stuff.
Right.
And I'm really into like somatic healing. So that's like going into the body rather than going into the mind. So I don't like to think my way out of like my emotional issues.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like to kind of not spend time thinking about them, but think about the body more. And with attention. So putting attention on the body. So like when I work out with weights, I'm not just there to like get sets done. I'm there to I'm there to take my mental attention and give it to the body. For once,
right.
Like most of the time the body is like a subservient to my conscious. It's like, go get me a water, and it like a servant, it goes and gets me the water. But when I'm spending time in athletics or in a gym, it's the opposite. It's my mind is there for my body. And I've developed this almost like Eastern like myofascial practice where I spend a lot of time with these like foam roller balls and stuff like that. And I find it just puts a lot of attention to the body. It forces pressure to points, forces me to release parts of my body that are stiff. And so those things clear my head and keep me kind of center. That's at the individual level, but there's also like, I love to spend time with family and friends. I got a great family and a great friend network, and it's and that just makes me happy. It makes me happy even thinking about it. So
you're a lucky guy. Is there anything that you wish you could say but you didn't get a chance to say? Any lasting words?
Well, no, but maybe this. I wrote a LinkedIn post about gratitude this week. Maybe you can even check it out afterwards, but I think it's so helpful. I think it's a metaphysical law. I think like science, I think it's better in all circumstances, even pain and suffering, even in victimhood. It's better to find elements to be grateful for. And for that, I just want to say, if anybody watched this, if you're watching, I really meant what I said at the beginning, in a sincere way. I really appreciate your time and attention on this. It's a really valuable thing to offer somebody, is their time and attention. And so thank you for watching and listening. And I hope you got something out of it. And that would be it.
Okay. And thank you so much for that. And thank you for being here. You shared a wealth of information and knowledge and wisdom. And we went for 2 hours. We're going to split this episode in 2 parts. And so this was a phenomenal conversation. And I learned a lot. And if our listeners and viewers learned just 10% of what I learned, I think their businesses can transform. And so they have lots of nuggets of gold here. We'll do our best to put them out there. We'll create a blog post with it and things like that. We'll create show notes. We'll put all the resources that you cited, we'll put them in there so that our listeners and our audience can, do their own research, find out more about it. And of course, as Mike said, please comment, interact, engage with the episode. And final word, is LinkedIn the best way to get hold of you, Mike? If someone wants to get in touch with you.
You can find me fairly easy on LinkedIn. Maybe we'll put a Linktree article. I have I'm launching my own podcast on YouTube called The Chaput Perspective, or the podcast is called First Principles, but my YouTube channel is called The Chaput Perspective.
Awesome.
And so if anybody wants to find me, it should be easy to do. We'll put a highlighted comment on the bottom of this, and so
Awesome.
it would be great. Meet me over there on my LinkedIn. I try to write a thought leadership article on various topics pretty frequently on LinkedIn, and so you might find something that you like over there as well.
All right. Great. Thank you, Mike. And until next time.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.